Hello, friends, and welcome back to Your Weekender. I'm Chris, and I'm happy you've joined me here today. So I was thinking it might be fun to do a classic TV episode review, something from the 60s, 70s, or 80s. I'm kind of laid up right now with my ankle, so I've been looking at some of the old shows from that time period, and I think I have a funny one for you here today. And I'll link it down in the description section so that you can watch it too. It's available also on YouTube. So the show that we're talking about is WKRP in Cincinnati. It was an American sitcom series about the misadventures of a staff of a struggling radio station based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. The show was created by Hugh Wilson and was based upon his real-life experiences as a advertising sales manager for a top radio station in Atlanta, Georgia, WQXI. I remember that station. Wilson once told the Cincinnati Enquirer about the show that he selected WKRP as the call sign for the radio station because he wanted to stand for crap. KRP. So pretty funny right there already. Anyway, so the show consisted of a few characters. Let's just run down the list real quick. There was Andy Travis, played by Gary Sandy. For the most part, he was the vice president and program director on the show. We had Arthur Carlson, played by Gordon Jump, occasionally called the big guy. No, not the other big guy, this big guy. He was the middle-aged general manager whose main qualification for the job was that his mother, a business tycoon, was the station's owner. There was Dr. Johnny Fever, played by Howard Hessman. His real name is John R. Caravella. He was a veteran disc jockey on the show who came to WKRP after being fired from a major Los Angeles radio station. And then there was Les Nessman, played by Richard Sanders. He was the strange, kind of nerdy news reporter on the show. Always seemed to wear a bow tie and took his job very, very seriously. And then there was Jennifer Marlowe, played by Lonnie Anderson. She was the station's receptionist and the show's blonde bombshell. Apparently, she was also the highest paid on the staff at the radio station, which I'm sure didn't go over too well with everyone. Herb Tarlick was played by Frank Bonner. He was the boorish, tasteless, and vain sales manager at WKRP. And he was also sometimes referred to as the little guy. And he had a thing for Jennifer. Moving on, we had Venus Flytrap. So Venus was played by Tim Reed. He was the soulful, funky evening DJ. He ran his show with a smooth-talking persona and mood lighting in the studio. And finally, Bailey Quarters, played by Jan Smithers. She was the young upstart at the radio station and was in charge of billing and station traffic. Although she had recently graduated from journalism school and with some training in editing and intent on becoming a broadcast executive, she is later given additional duties as an on-air news reporter, in which she proves more capable than poor old Les Nessman. So WKRP in Cincinnati premiered on September 18th, 1978 on CBS. And it aired for 4 seasons, a total of 90 episodes. The series concluded on April the 21st, 1982. That was about a year before I graduated high school. So there's the cast of characters that I just ran down. Good-looking group of people, I'd say. All right, so why don't we get into the episode that I'd like to bring to you today. It was aired in 1981, and it was titled Baby Is Cold Inside. And the reason it was called that was the premise of the show was the heating was out in the building where the radio station was located. And so everyone was really cold and was trying to figure out what was was going on. So the show starts with Johnny Fever putting on a record, and it was The Boss, Bruce Springsteen, and his hit Hungry Heart, which was one of my favorite songs of that time period. Love that song. So that was Johnny opening the episode, putting on Hungry Heart by Bruce Springsteen, The Boss. And very shortly after that, Jennifer comes to the radio booth to ask Johnny if he knew what was going on. And he really didn't know, but he was cold, she was cold. And so they started having a conversation about how to get warm. And Johnny thought perhaps some brandy would warm them up. So initially, Jennifer resisted. She didn't want to do it. It was 8 a.m, but then she finally agreed, and they began having some shots to get warm. Well, what was funny was Johnny was drinking straight out of the bottle, and when he turned it up a couple of different times, he thought he saw someone in the window. He thought he saw Mrs. Carlson, the owner of the station, but he wasn't quite sure. So we asked Jennifer about that, and she didn't think that Mrs. Carlson was there at the station, but she was. And she came back by a second time, and Johnny had the bottle turned up. That kind of set things in motion for him, as he thought that might be the end of his tenure there at the station. So he was worried, and anyway. So a little later on, Jennifer and Mrs. Carlson were chatting in a back office, and Mrs. Carlson said, "You know, it is really cold in here. Maybe have Johnny bring that bottle down so that maybe I could have a little taste too." So they called Johnny. Johnny came with the bottle, and then they ran him out. They didn't really want him to talk to. They just wanted a taste of his libations there. So what was really funny to me, one of the funny, if not the funniest line in the whole episode, Mrs. Carlson took a sip of Johnny's brandy, and she kind of coughed and said, "Good night. Where does Johnny get this stuff?" And Jennifer said, "Well, I think he gets it at the hardware store." I don't know. That was really funny to me. And you know, maybe he does get it at the hardware store. I don't know what they do up there in Ohio. Maybe one of my listeners or one of my subscribers here could tell us. So anyway, later on in the episode, Les Nessman, the newsman, pays a visit to Mrs. Carlson down in the office. And his reason for engaging with Mrs. Carlson was he wants walls around his desk. And in the office there's just an open concept plan. All the desks are just out in the open. And Les, though, thinks that he needs walls. He deserves walls. He wants walls. But what he has currently is tape. And he took Mrs. Carlson to his desk area, showed her the tape where he thinks the wall should be. And so he's trying to convince her, to compel her to invest in putting him up some walls. And some of the funniest, or a funnier line that she responded with was this, and I'm going to need my glasses to read this one. Mrs. Carlson told Les, "A person who thinks he has walls is infinitely more interesting than one who does. I mean, why be cooped up with walls when you could have tape? It's ingenious." So that was her way of telling Les Nessman, no, you're not going to get the walls that you want. And she laughs it off, and Les is dejected. So anyway, and the last part of the show was Mrs. Carlson requesting that the station play Gershwin. She's a big Gershwin fan, and that's not really the type of music that this station plays, but because Johnny was very worried about losing his job. She had seen him drinking brandy out of a bottle while on shift. He played it, and she was really happy about it, and she was singing around the office. Anyway, really funny episode. WKRP in Cincinnati, one of my favorite shows from the late 70s into the early 80s. I'll put a link again to the episode down below. Watch it if you would, and comment. Tell me if you think it was as funny as I did. I hope everyone gets a chance to see that episode. I found it really funny. Again, one of my favorite shows. Probably my top 5 during that time period. WKRP in Cincinnati. And although not quite brandy, it is cold outside here. And here's to you, Johnny Fever, and the cast of WKRP in Cincinnati, and all of my subscribers and anyone that's enjoying these videos. Cheers, stay warm, be safe, and we'll see you next time. This is Chris with Your Weekender.